Hello, my name is Olena and I came to the United Kingdom in July 2022 together with my husband and our 3 children. We came from Kharkiv city. It's a very large city in eastern part of Ukraine. About 2 million people lived there before the war. And now we live in rural Devon in Tedburn St. Mary village. It's a small village to the west of Exeter, about 8 miles. And to tell the truth, it's a big change because my family used to live in a modern large city like London, Birmingham, and so on, and now we live in a really it's very beautiful place and the nature is just amazing, but it's a very rural Devon, and the way of living is totally different to the one we used to in our country. We are lucky to have a car, and we arrived to the United Kingdom using our car, so the car gives us some freedom because I think it's impossible to live in rural Devon without having a car. And for many Ukrainians, it's a really big problem. Most Ukrainians who came to the United Kingdom before the war lived in big cities like Kyiv, Kharkiv, Dnipro, Odessa, and so on. And as you know, most Ukrainians now are living in rural areas because it's easier to find sponsors in such areas. And I think many of them are facing the same problems, because if you don't have a car, it's really very difficult, because you just can't go shopping and can't go anywhere. It's not a secret that the public transport here is working very bad, and you can't rely on it. I have a niece, and she, together with her mother and younger sister, also arrived from Ukraine to the United Kingdom, and they were lucky to find a sponsor not far from us, also in Tedburn St. Mary. And my niece is working, and she is also studying at Exeter College. But she is 16 years old and she can't drive a car, and it's a really great problem for her to get to her classes or to her work, because she just wake up, go to trying to catch a public transport, a bus, and it doesn't arrive, and the next one doesn't arrive either. And so she needs to call me and ask, oh, can you please drive me to Exeter, because I'm missing my study in college. It's not good, I think. And it's quite difficult to change your way of living, because well, when you live in large city, you have a lot of opportunities, and in rural areas you may be missing the possibility to go and have a cup of coffee in some pretty coffee shop, or just to walk on the streets and so on, because I think it's a really big problem of villages in rural Devon, that they are not for people, they are not for pedestrians. You even don't have a pavement in most places, so it's impossible to walk around the street on a small village because the streets are only for cars, and it's really dangerous to walk there. And for me, for example, we live even not in the village, we live in a farm a little bit far from village, and my child to go to school needs to walk about a half of an hour to the nearest bus stop to get to school, but she needs to go using the very narrow roads, and I just can't let my daughter to do so because I'm afraid of the cars driving all the ways, and I'm afraid that it is really dangerous for her. And there is no pavement, so that's why I need to drive her to the bus stop, and she can't do it herself. And I think that I still can't understand why there are no pavements for people. Are all those streets were designed just for cars? Well, so yeah, it's the thing which is disturbing me a little bit. I think it would be much better for all the people who live in rural areas to have the pavements, to have a special roads for bicycles, because you know there are quite a lot of people who are driving bicycles, who are running in the mornings, and they have to do it using the narrow lanes. And it's dangerous both for them and for cars, because you know it's really very, very unpleasant experience to use narrow Devon lanes because you are driving. So in Ukraine we don't have such narrow roads at all. No, I have never seen such narrow roads until I have came here, and this is my top one things which impressed me most of all, the narrow lanes. And each time I need to drive them, and I do it very often because I need to drive to Crediton, where my second daughter is studying, and it's only possible or through the narrow lanes, or I need to make a much longer distance and to go through the Exeter. It's 2 times longer and it takes more time. So that's why I'm using that narrow lanes. And each time for me it's a big stress because, you know, here in Britain there are very high hedges on both sides of that lanes, and you can't see anything. You can't see the cars which are going to you, and you can't see people which may be running on that road. And so every time you're driving that lanes, you are just very, very nervous, and I can't understand why, because in Ukraine there is a rule, they can't have any bushes closer to the road than 1.5 meters, if I'm not mistaken. So that's why you can see the road clearly, and I think it's more safe for all the people and vehicles who are participate in movement. And I think, well, okay, maybe it's just British tradition to have these hedges, but you know, it's really funny. Sometimes you feel yourself like the Alice, like you are driving through the labyrinth from Alice in the Wonderland. So it's exactly what I feel while I'm driving that narrow lanes. But I like living in rural Devon because the nature here is just amazing, and it's really very, very beautiful and colorful, and I like British weather. I don't know who said that it's bad. No, it's not bad at all. Everything is green around, and it's quite warm in winter, and it's not hot in summer. Well, for all Ukrainians who arrive to Great Britain, the language barrier is quite a big problem. Even if you know English well, for example, like me, I already knew English when I arrived here. But the first days, the first time, it's quite difficult because people have some special regional accents, and some of them are speaking clearly, while others are just speaking in the way you can't understand them. And it was really, at first time, it was really very hard just to understand what people are trying to tell you. And it's for a person who already knows English. But a lot of Ukrainians who arrived here, they have just some very little knowledge of English which were left from their school years, and they definitely have a big problem because, you know, when you don't know language and you need, for example, to get to the bus, and you come to the bus, but you even can't understand what driver is telling you. You can't understand what he wants from you, and you can't explain where you need to go. It's really very, very challenging for a big number of Ukrainian people here in Devon, you know. And it's really very matter the help of people who are surrounding you. And if you are lucky, you will meet a lot of really good and helpful and understanding people who will be talking slowly, using more simple language constructions to help you to understand. But unfortunately, you are not always in such good circumstances, and yes, and it's a very big stress for Ukrainians whose English is not good, just to understand what's going on around them, and they have problems how to ask for help, how to get somewhere, and they definitely need to have help with learning English. And this is the problem of rural areas. When people live, for example, in Exeter, yes, there is a college, and you can attend special ESOL classes at college. But when you live in a rural area, there is the start of classes at 9:30, but you may not have a suitable transport to be in time for that classes. And if you are choosing the evening classes, you can't choose them because the public transport will not be working at 8 or 9 o'clock at the time when the classes in college are over. So you will not be able to get home if you don't have a car. And that is also a big problem because Ukrainians are trying to find work to earn money, to support themselves, to support their families. And that's why they need to combine a work with language study. But they can't do it because there are no public transport. It's really, really very bad situation for them because they need to choose what to do, to choose a low-paid job which is available for people without knowing English language, or to go to study to study the language, but they will be able to find a better job if they know English quite well. And unfortunately, because of that problems, they just can't use both opportunities. They need to choose what to do, to go to study or to go to work because of that public transport problems. And people who just left everything in Ukraine and come here, they don't have enough money to buy a car. And if the person lived in Ukraine in a large city, many of them just didn't need a car because in Ukraine the public transport works quite good. So they just didn't need that car, and they don't have a driving license, and it takes time to receive driving license here. That is the other big challenge for Ukrainians. And I also want to tell you about the problem of young mothers with children, because most part of Ukrainians who came, it were women with children. And if you live in rural area, there are no so many clubs for children or places where you can go and spend time. You can't just walk on streets because it's dangerous. There are no pavements, yes, and all you have is just to sit in your place with the child, and it's not very good, I think. In Ukraine, in cities, there are a lot of different activities for children, and here in Exeter there are also such activities, but how you will get from rural Devon to Exeter, it takes a lot of time, efforts and money, because the cost of public transport is quite high, and to pay for, if you have several children, you just can't afford to go very often from your village to city because it's too expensive for you. So, yeah, and I also want to tell about how important are people around you. If your host family is, if you are lucky with your host family, they will make a lot of efforts to help you, to introduce you to the local community and so on. Because, for example, me, I was really the lucky one. My hosts and their relatives spent a lot of time just introducing us to their friends, to their relatives, going with us to different local events like, I don't know, like local pantomime or local choir or local farm markets and so on. And they were really helpful to introduce you to local people, and it's really nice when you are going to the local shop and you just see some faces you already know and who say, oh, hello, how are you? And you really start to feel yourself not alone. And this feeling not to be alone, it's important for your successful integration to local community. And I think that people who came to rural areas maybe are in good position, because in rural areas so people know each other, and when somebody new is coming, and if you have a good host who is introducing you, very soon you became familiar to people around you. And for example, it was very helpful for my youngest daughter, who now is studying in a local primary school. When she came, her first days, it was amazing. People from her class prepared some cards for her, and some of them were even written in Ukrainian language. It was very sweet, and I want to say they were really very, very helpful on that first stage when the child is afraid of everything, shy because she doesn't understand people around her and so on. So this local community was in school was really very helpful. Both teachers, children, their parents. We arrived in July, and parents of Vicky's classmates were just inviting us to barbecue, for tea and so on, and just to meet each other, to get to know each other better, children to get to know each other and to start playing and so on. And it really helped a lot and made the process of adaptation of my youngest child easier. And I'm really very thankful to local people. But I think it's because I was lucky with my sponsor, and I know that not all Ukrainians are so lucky, and many of women who now live in rural Devon, they feel themselves very isolated, you know, because so yes, they have the safe place to live, and they are very thankful to their hosts, but they feel the lack of communication, and it's a big problem because they just can't. They have small children, they can't left them alone at home, so they just can't go somewhere far away, and it's quite hard, I think.